baby. All right, here we go. It is the old live before lock Sunday style. One of two shows you're going to get tonight. We have NBA now, and then at 7:30, you are going to get the NFL live before lock for that rousing game between the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers with a 37. That's right, 3-7 projected point total. Oh boy.
I am not roused by that. I'm sick, so several things that would normally cause me to rouse aren't having that effect on me physiologically. But let me think about that again. No, there's no rousing going on here. I'm not aroused.
No, I got to write an article about just that game, and then I'm going to do a show about just that game.
Hey, that's exciting. Talk about Singletary, and then let's talk about Singletary some more.
Hey, you guessed my captain. It's going to be Singletary.
And from Josh Allen, and then a little more.
Yep, Josh Allen number 2, and the Pittsburgh defense number 3. But that's for tonight.
And those three work really well together, I think.
Yes, there's a little lack of synergy there, but that's what we're going to be left with. But tonight,
promote synergy. Right. I'm ready.
Tonight, NBA, and we've got that. We'll wait for some people to cruise on in here. I'm going to get the chats out. But reminder, we do have FantasyDraft as the sponsor. They've got, they just ran off their largest rake-free contest, or the largest rake-free contest this week in the NFL, $175,000 Hooter main event.
That's a lot of money.
We like Hooters in pairs.
Yeah, not just Hooter.
Not just
that would be
Hooter.
Strange. That's probably an owl conservatory in Sweden or something. So
something along those lines.
They are not sponsoring this fantasy football contest.
No, but if you ever watch a show with Ben Rasa, he does have a picture of a hoot. Oh, now my brother's calling when I'm on air. It's like my family's conspiring here against me.
Glad you're here to remind me to mute my phone at all times. Let me get that going real quick.
The best was when your desk phone used to ring every show.
I've gotten rid of it because I don't do radio anymore, but I did some amount of radio, and cell phones suck and landlines are clearer. So I had my $9 a month landline that, had 4 outgoing calls a month to do radio once a week and 68 incoming calls a day for, telemarketers and crap. So anyway. Yeah.
All right. So back to Fantasy Draft, only rake-free fantasy site out there. They bring in the heat again with the $175,000. Hooters main event, rake free. It's the largest and only rake free contest of its kind. Remember, on Fantasy Draft, they are 100% of all entry fees are paid to the contest winners. If you use the promo code OSMO, you will get up to $1,000 in play for a week. Now, this is how they do it rake free. You have a subscription instead of paying rake. Play for $1,000. That's what I have. It's $1,000 of play over 30 days. It cost me $5.99. That $1,000, if I were to play that volume on the other sites, would cost me somewhere between $120 and $150. Would you rather pay $120 or $150 or $5.99? Exactly. Go check them out over there. All right, we've got a 4-gamer tonight. It's actually interesting. It's a few things have moved around here to help give us a little bit more clarity. We know that Joel Embiid is out with an illness. We know that Al Horford will be in. Now, Horford has missed the last 2 with a combination of knee and hamstring injuries. We know that Jamal Murray has a bruised torso, is what it sounds like.
Trunk. When you bruise your trunk, it hurts.
That
just as any elephant.
True. Or so I've been told. I've also seen some sites say he has a sore back. So this is like hockey. Upper body, lower body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that always cracked me up.
But he should be playing. That's really the only main ones. De'Aaron Fox getting close to a return. He's been popping up as questionable / doubtful, not ready to play yet, but he's not being immediately ruled out. So that is nice. And of course, Marvin Bagley III is back. He has played 2 games thus far since returning from his, I believe it was a broken thumb. He had played 23 and 21 minutes in each of the last 2 games. I think those are the main ones. Oh, Wilson Chandler back from being a very, very bad boy.
Ranked him. DNC. You know what I'm going to use that as? I'm going to use that as a segue into another player I want to talk about who Horford being in made me reduce my rank. I've re-updated new rankings, by the way. Let me talk a little bit about Norvel Pelle. Norvel Pelle.
I thought we were going to talk about the cock.
No, because among your parts of the cop. All right, now you've got me.
Cock,
what?
C-O-K. KOC.
Oh well, we're
KOQ,
gonna
whatever.
we'll handle the cock later. But
Okay.
for now, oh boy, gonna vomit. Okay, sorry. Okay, so yeah, Norvel Pelle. I remember the first time I watched him was scouting him when he was coming out of high school 8 years ago. Norvel Pelle is 25 or 26 years old, so he was academically ineligible or something to go to basically any college. So he entirely eschewed college, went pro, was drafted at some point by the 76ers, then played a summer year with them. That's where I saw him in his first summer league. Then played 2 summer leagues with the Heat. Then played maybe 2 more summer leagues with the 76ers. Of course, which played multiple places off the top of my head. I know he played in Beirut, and I know he played in Italy. I think he was on Torino. And at some point, got clipped while in the G League for doing the same bad boy things as Wilson Chandler and served a suspension for that. But over the course of this year, has played 3 games for 11, 12, and 12 minutes, I think it was. So that'd be a combined 35 minutes. And if those 35 minutes were... well, I guess they are anyway, but if they were in one game, you'd feel good about it because he scored somewhere to the area of 55 or 60 fantasy points in those 35 minutes. He's defensively woeful. He's knocked over by a stiff wind. I'd guess he's 6'11", 220, something like that. But he has a very sort of Mitch Robinson thing going on, and in very, very limited time, has been fairly beast-like this year. Dunks, blocks. Mitch Robinson's a very good analogy. $3,000 on DK. I think he's 37 on FanDuel. Power forward eligible. With Horford back in, I really wanted to fire that bullet and say I preferred him over guys like Mason Plumlee, who I'm a pretty big fan of tonight, and a couple other cheap options in those positions. I can't now, but he's still ranked as a D and a C. And at the Stone Nuts minimum, if I'm throwing out the 3K guy, not 3,100, because there's a couple options there I'd move to, but if I had exactly $3,000 in a GPP, I think he's still getting the nod for me over Alan Crabb. And I feel like there's another guy. But I have some interest in him. If I had 150 lineups, I'd have 3 Norvel Pelles. And the last time Embiid sat, they still blew out the Cavs. And he played the entire fourth quarter in that game and had, 20 fantasy points in the fourth quarter or something. So blowout, obviously, less likely here. Curious what the line is on this game with, Embiid missing. I'm presuming it got even closer. So should be a competitive contest. But
Philly by 3 still. I think it was Philly by 4
it was more
5
so, yeah,
today, earlier.
That sounds about right. So just long way of saying, hey, I had a metric ton of interest in that Philadelphia-Brooklyn game. If Horford had also been out, now less. Still plenty. Still like Josh Richardson. Still like Ben Simmons, especially FanDuel where he's too cheap. Again, more... I got about 465 complaints yesterday, and 2 or 3 of them were very legitimate, and a couple of them were, you need to talk about FanDuel more. So I'll continue to yell out FanDuel pricing disparities whenever I see them, and unfortunately, I just don't have enough time in my day to put the 2 hours into FanDuel after putting the 2 hours into DraftKings, basically. But I will attempt to take notice. So top of my head, guys who on FanDuel are, relatively very well priced compared to DraftKings. Spencer Dinwiddie in the same game, fine on DraftKings. Not a great matchup. Again, this is a team that with Embiid out is going to be more susceptible on the interior. So a big cookie there for Jared Allen, for example. But, it's still a pretty formidable backcourt defense with, Ben Simmons and Josh Richardson, etc. But this also means Furkan will start, and that means some opportunity for the opposing offense. So, Spencer Dinwiddie, 77 on FanDuel, 82 on DK. Josh Richardson, I think the same price both sites basically, which makes him far better on FanDuel with a higher floor in the way those curves work out. Marquise Chris, another guy you could certainly get in your life over Norvel Pelle on FanDuel, is 45. I think it's 52 on DK. Real quick comments on him since I said his name. The others are a little more intuitive. I don't know what they're doing with him. Normally, Steve Kerr while not necessarily consistent, I understood what he was doing and why. I really don't know what he's doing with all these guys are out. We're terrible. Oh, the owner says we're not going to tank. Okay, we'll be more competitive. No, wait, I changed my mind. Draymond's only going to play 27 minutes or less every game. Then he played like 18 and 24, and then all of a sudden he played 30 and 33, and D'Angelo Russell got back up, and then they're down, and so they're making moves like they're trying to be competitive and win games, and then all of a sudden Marquise Chris is playing a lot more time again, but at least 2 games in a row now you had, 35 to 45 fantasy point games out of Marquise Chris. That's still really cheap. There's a lot of guys to take those minutes from him, especially if Eric Pascal comes back. The risk in rostering Marquise Chris on FanDuel, although he's mostly just playing backup center, is there are, more bigs waiting in the wings, and Pascal coming back will indirectly put pressure on his time. But getting back to the original source material, is 4,500 on FanDuel and 52 on DK, so that's obviously quite a bit better. Ben Simmons is dollar per dollar, $600-700 cheaper on FanDuel. That's significantly different. That's all I got off the top of my head, but if anything comes up during the show, I will also mention it. But those guys I all mentioned, obviously stronger plays on the Duel of the Fans.
All right, we had somebody did ask in premium chat. We've got there was an in-day downgrade there of Jamal Murray. Does that affect you one way or the other? My thoughts are I think
know that. Let me look at we got a 5:30 injury report in 17 minutes. Okay, what was he downgraded to?
Questionable. So my thought is I think he's just gonna have the questionable tag. I'm not fired up to play him because of the opponent today. Did we get the other one I was looking at was Millsap? Sorry, I closed that.
Still questionable.
So Millsap's still questionable. So I would expect if anybody sits, it's Millsap. They don't really need him in this game. Murray 50-50. I'm not as excited about him, but he's more of a tournament play at this point. We talked about this a little bit on last night's show, where he is just kind of he needs to have a really, really good scoring game to get there, which he can, but there are a lot of other options out there that do it, and it can score for Denver. And then there's enough tertiary ball handlers or other ball handlers that he's not even really technically the primary guy. He brings it up, but he's not the point guard like you would think, because he's got, wait for it, an amazing passing big man on his team that probably could come close to leading the league in assists if he really wanted to. So
yeah, you could wilt that stuff out. For those who don't know the Wilt Chamberlain story, on high on my list of cool things done by NBA players was when they complained Wilt wasn't passing the ball enough, and he went, okay, I'm going to lead the league in assists this year, and did, and then went back to crushing people. Like that's on that list, with like Tristan Thompson changing his shooting hand, and Brook Lopez just deciding when he was 30 in his 9th year in the league to become an outstanding 3-point shooter. And I love it when guys do stuff like that. So let me rant on a couple things that I'll forget to say unless I get to them first. So 4 game slate here, basically derp over unders, but we have 2 games with pretty significant lines in them. One being the Nuggets on projected to both around 12-point lines, give or take a point either side. The Nuggets spanking the Knicks and the Lakers spanking the Hawks. We had a very similar situation with a 4-game slate. I think it might have been larger. I can't remember. I think they played on the 5th. Anyhow, the last time the Nuggets played the Knicks, actually another really interesting scheduling wrinkle. We have 4 games tonight. We have 2 East-West games and 2 conference games, with East Coast teams playing in Brooklyn and Philadelphia, and West Coast teams playing in Sacramento and Golden State. The 2 cross-conference games, the Lakers and Atlanta, and New York, Knicks, and Denver, finish up those series for the year. Those teams have already played. Both of those matchups have already occurred. I went back and watched decent chunks of both those games this morning. The 2 intra-conference games between the 76ers and Nets, who play 4 times a year, and the Kings and Warriors, who play 4 times this year, haven't played yet. So that's, I don't know, the kind of thing that a dork like me finds interesting. I feel like I had more to say, but I did want to bring out the allegory. So they played in the Garden the last time. We're now in Denver. When they played in the Garden, the Nuggets won by high 30s. Should memory serve. And the reason I remember this game most specifically is I said, and some of you remember this is 10, 11 days ago, I really think the Nuggets bludgeoned the living piss out of the Knicks here. And I am a big fan of Mason Plumlee, who had a very good game, and Monty Morris, both of whom I ranked. I think I ranked Monty Morris as a D in cash, but a B in GPPs. And Mason Plumlee is a C and a B. And Mason Plumlee had like 30, and Monty Morris had like 40. And I remember that because a guy won like $50,000 with Monty Morris in there. So, and I will, now that I'm done petting myself and that guy in the back, I'll extrapolate that to say, with 2 games with significant lines tonight, I don't think it's nuts to build a lineup narrative around, I don't think this game stays close. Doesn't mean you can't take any of the starters from this game, but one of the 2 placeholder lineups I have is exactly like I said on that day, based on the contention that the Nuggets, who again beat this team by 30 something, high 30s, I want to say 37 in a row, 37 all of 10 days ago, now at home in one of the toughest locations to play in the NBA, managed to blow them out again. And so I have in that lineup less interest in the expensive players in this game and more interest in the various bench guys who I think would be out there cleaning up the mess. Okay.
That was good. I'm impressed.
Was it? Your reaction was outstanding. I mean,
I'm trying to solve
the 12 seconds of dead air when I was done talking really conveyed excitement on your part.
Fly ball,
caught. Very good. I was right with you. I knew right where that was going. They don't call him the best color man in the business for nothing.
Let's see here. So 343, Jamal Murray. Thora Columbar Soreness has been downgraded to questionable.
Okay, there you go. I'm sorry. What Thoro Columbar? I don't know what that is.
That would be, I don't know either.
Okay, moving on. Then I can.
I've literally never heard of that. It is.
If that is a fancy term for getting a bruise on your stomach or something, I'm gonna run that crap out at the gym every chance I get.
The junction between your thoracic spine and your lumbar spine.
Okay, so it's someone caught him in the back. Okay,
yeah.
So
so this makes more sense.
Lumbar. Okay, so yeah, he's got it's affecting his spine. There's nerve involvement.
Yeah, that's a little different than torso. So I would say he's 50-50. I mean, we're risking it here.
I have no clue. Not a massive priority for me anyway. Liking Jokic and possibly thinking this game blows out. There's obviously nothing wrong with him. $5,900 was effrontery, but again showed that that's by no means a must play. That price has come up. I don't think you need to get there on FanDuel. You can obviously have some. There's real merit to saying, like, I would have had some interest in somehow if we didn't have LeBron news by 6 playing some LeBron James. I think there is merit to playing Paul Millsap on FanDuel because again, it's a pretty good matchup, and he's going to be 1% owned. Now, you're taking a huge risk. It's a play that will fail probably 50-60% of the time through not playing much or blowout and not getting all the way through. But that game stays close, and Paul Millsap has, 5 stocks and, various other stuff. You could randomly drop 40 on FanDuel at 1% ownership, and you can win yourself. Oh, I think I saw it was 150K on FanDuel tonight, so I'm sure first prize is 100K. That's a joke.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to see here now. Jamal is we're enough on Jamal.
We're gonna get the updated. We're gonna get the updated injury report in 9 minutes. So I'll reserve judgment on Geraldo investigating Jamal Murray's tomb for that long.
All right, and I put in a request. They said we don't have projections at the moment for Pelle or Draymond, but they should be working on those. If you were gonna project Pelle, what would you project him for? 8 fantasy points. A median projection is what we put out there.
Well, right. See, that's why it's weird. I would say there is a significant chance he does not play. I would say it's less than 50%. Sort of reminds me of the Boban situation where the first night that
good example.
Elon Wright was out, Boban moved into the backup rotation. And while he did play the blowout of the fourth quarter, he also played the end of the first, the beginning of the second, the end of the third, the beginning of the fourth quarter, where in the backup rotation, they usually ran a 10-man rotation there. They put him in instead of Delon Wright, and Maxi Kleber, who's normally the backup center, played the backup 4, which he can do very, very well. So the next night I said, I'm not sure this sticks. I would say Boban is 50-50 to play. if he plays, I like him a lot, but you're accepting it. It's sort of the same thing with Norvel Pelle. With Horford in and Embiid out was the worst situation for this because the blowout is much less likely to happen here and the time is nominal. So if you ask me to project his fantasy points tonight, I would end up saying something like 8 because I would project him for like now 10 to 12 minutes and 16 fantasy points if he played, which may not happen. But it's, on a 4-game slate, something cute you can do for the minimum. And again, Horford isn't 100%. So if Horford decides to, if they take it easy on Horford, or if the game's getting out of control one way or the other, yeah, maybe you get 20 minutes out of him. And on a 4-game slate, getting 1-2% minimum priced owned guy who is a very good fantasy producer has some merit. But I basically, I just wanted to tell a story. But I would end up projecting Pelle for, I would say slightly greater than 50-50 to play. So again, keep in mind, he has played 3 games this year. 3. So let's not oversell ourselves here. But, they talk well about him. So he's somewhere around 50-50 to play. And almost certainly would be mostly blowout run. You'll get Horford to center and Mike Scott in there and Kyle O'Quinn backing him up and Mike Scott backed up by, to some degree, Tobias Harris, and they're going to go small. You'll get a little more James Ennis. You'll get, and so on and so forth.
All right. One thing I wanted to mention is I'm going to drop the Cash Game Building Blocks article in chat, but that's always a helpful one. I've got in a couple tricks there for Fantasy Cruncher. We've got some fun on risky value, good value, etc. One of the guys
talk to me about those guys. Yeah, let's go through.
One of the guys so I put in there, I said Ben Simmons is going to be the primetime player. I figured Embiid was going to be out, so that's totally fine. Makes sense. He's a little more expensive, but I put him above LeBron and Anthony Davis. And this will answer Poker Player Eric's question. Some other people are talking about Davis and LeBron, so we'll end up with them. But I just want to talk about that. So Simmons is and you can fit Simmons and one of those guys in your lineup. So we have enough also Rans and ne'er-do-wells to do that. It's not a problem. Right. I said good value I thought was Jeremy Grant. My thinking being that for his reasonable price point, 47 DK, 44 FanDuel, 11 on Yahoo, whether he starts or not, I think he's the balance of minutes is going to tip in his favor over Millsap because they don't really need Millsap in this game most likely. So even if Millsap does play, I could see it being 22 Millsap, 26 Grant. That's just kind of where I'm going here against the Knicks. So short slate, so just kind of going there. Kyle O'Quinn, I said he's risky value. If Horford and Embiid were both out, yeah, we can play him. If just Embiid's out, it's still a question mark. He has played in 15 games this season. He's played in 3 of the last 11. In these 15 games, he has topped 10 minutes only 6 times. So even when O'Quinn plays, it's not a guarantee. And those games were with Embiid out. So Quinn is a risk because he can break the damn slate. He's got a 1.3 or 1.4 fantasy point per minute rate. If he gets 20 minutes, giggity, there you go. If he gets 5.5 minutes, which he did the last time, it sucks. Right,
but I think he is better than that. And it's important to make the distinction of there being no Embiid. Like where there's no Embiid, he should play the non Horford center minutes.
Yes.
So that's gonna be like 16, 17 minutes. I think I underranked him giving him AC in cash. I think he's still the floor, right? He was the other 3K player, by the way, that I'm sure was on my brain when I had this entire thing here.
He's not perfect.
32? I think he's 32, actually.
Yeah, he's 32, 36, and 10. So essentially the floor. He's 200 above, 100 above in the floor on the 3 sides.
Yeah. That's hard for me not to like it at 3,200. Let me see what we haven't projected at for ownership. But let me go back and take a deeper look at how he did in all the games that Embiid was out. Because the last game, that game against Cleveland, they were demolishing them. But while the game was still in its early stages, he played about 7 minutes in the first to second quarter interlude. So, all right. So I can go in here. All right.
So while you're looking at that, I'm just going to keep yammering here. So finishing it up, I said, here's an interesting way you can use Fantasy Cruncher if you want to. So I said, if I play Trae Young, I want to play one of LeBron or Anthony Davis. So you can make Trae Young a key player and say must play one of whoever else is in the group. You can put those other two guys in there. Now, you want to be careful when you're doing a setting like that because that's taking a whole chunk of your salary cap. So sometimes it is going to get you less of those players than you want because it's tied to another very expensive player. But if you name your group, which you can in most of the optimizers, you can name it something, you can quickly find it and enable or disable it. But I thought that was an interesting way of going about it.
So I'm going to pause just for a sec. Sorry, I apologize. I would disagree with your characterization of Kyle O'Quinn because I currently have him for 18 minutes, and looking at it again, I still think that's a reasonable projection. And Kyle O'Quinn's a very good, he's an above average by far fantasy producer. And the matchup is pretty damn good too. So I have him at 18 minutes and 22 fantasy points at $3,200. I think that's good chalk. And without Embiid, it feels reasonably safe to me, and the investment really isn't there. Your comments about like his average minutes per game, if you look at the games Embiid was out, the 4 that came up in my database, I think this is Embiid's 5th game out. So for some reason I didn't get a number, I apologize. But he played 13,
5th or
15,
6th, but you're pretty close.
Yeah, but he played 13, 15, 17, 18 in the 4 games I just looked at. And he's going to play the non-Horford center minutes, barring ridiculous blowout. So he's a good enough producer, and the matchup is really good. You know what I'm saying? If they're playing, the Lakers, if they're playing the Jazz, if they're playing, then it's like, okay, he can kind of disappear. With all these guys missing, it's obviously nothing is etched in stone, but I do feel barring heinous foul trouble or massive blowout, so big that somehow he doesn't play the 4th and Pelle does. And again, they anyhow, I think O'Quinn is reasonably safe chalk. And I should, for that reason, change my ranking on him, which I think I changed my rankings on other guys, but I did not upgrade him once we got the other news. Yeah, I'm moving him from a C in cash to a B in cash. He was always an A in GPP. So I'm changing that and re-uploading that.
Yeah, and the risky plays, to finish that up, it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're coming with some inherent risk that there's a wide range of outcomes.
Okay. I think that is fair to say, but I think his range of outcomes relative to a $3,200 price is outstanding, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, could I see 14 minutes and 12 fantasy points? Sure. But that's my floor at 3,200. Like, I could also see 20 minutes and 37 fantasy points on a 4-game slate. So it's I guess it's what exactly you're describing. All right, updated. There you go.
Okay, and then so the other finishing it off, Atlanta is frisky at home still, so it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I mean, hey, did we think that Houston was going to lose last night without Drummond and mostly without Griffin at home? No, we didn't. So that doesn't mean that we think Atlanta's going to get their ass kicked tonight because it's the Lakers. They might, but they also may not.
Yeah, I think it's more likely the Knicks get crushed. Obviously, they've played better in the Mike Miller games. That's fair, but I'm a big believer in this Denver team and this Denver defense. And 2 of the teams on the slate tonight, the Lakers and Denver, I have been really woeful to target. For 2 reasons. One, they both play at really slow paces and have excellent defenses. 2, the sites are, in my opinion, not pricing guys down enough against them. FanDuel does it okay. Maybe even you could argue FanDuel gets there, but just DraftKings doesn't do it. Dudes aren't cheap enough. I'm a big fan of Trae Young. I think $9,600 is a fair price. Here's the easiest way I can explain it. These 2 teams played in LA. The Lakers won by 21 in this game. I'm not sure you would have wanted, like, if I gave you retrospect to go back and look at that slate and look at all the players on the Hawks, I don't know if you would have wanted one. So I'm not saying don't play the Hawks. Like, someone just asked the question in chat, would you prefer to play Josh Richardson, Kevin Huerter, or Bogdan Bogdanovic on FanDuel at 4,800 or 4,700? I have Huerter very low down my list between those 3 guys. And he is someone I have heard mentioned like 11 times today. He's ranked high. Someone showed me another site's points per dollar rankings, and they had him towards the top. I am dubious. His additional time as backup point guard is relevant, and he is in that way sort of getting the rub that DeAndre Bembry was getting for a while. So that, and that is notable. That is something we can take a look at. and the price isn't crazy, but I don't know how to take in a tournament Kevin Huerter against the Lakers as opposed to Bogdan Bogdanovic against the Warriors or Josh Richardson against the Nets, unless the ownership is, Matt. So when you tell me that Kevin Huerter is also going to be probably less popular than Josh Richardson, but he might even be less popular than Bogdan. I've heard all those names a lot today. I'm going to go look at our rankings real quick. We have Huerter just above. Wow, they're all together. That's absolutely hilarious. In my most recent rankings, we have those three players that we're talking about at 32, 34, and 35%. In tournaments, I have Huerter so much less interesting for me than those other two guys. If you had to imagine one of these things happening, which of these seems most likely? Josh Richardson gets up to 30 minutes. I think he played 26 in each of the last two. And gets, 32 fantasy points and is the best of the three because there's a lot of risk with the other guys. Or Bogdan, who's been getting a lot of very real time again, finally finds his stuff and plays better in an island game against an anemic Golden State team with a whole cast of woeful defenders and manages to put up 30 or Kevin Huerter gets there with his minutes capped at 30, by the way. Those other guys could exceed that. Josh Richardson might get there and is just a better player and a much better chance of defensive stats. And we have Huerter on top of those three. For me, I don't know. That's just a little weird for me. Now he's cheaper. These are DK rankings. He's 400 less than Bogdan, 600 less than Josh Richardson. But they've said he's up to 30 minutes. And by way of making my point again, I'll go back and find that box score. I don't think if I'd have given you the right after this game to pick a Hawk, you would have taken one. Trae Young played 39 minutes. I have him at less than that tonight. But Trae Young played 39 minutes, made half his shots, had 31 points. It's obviously very good. 3 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, 8 turnovers. So DK scoring would have been better. 31, 2 steals is 35. 7 assists is 45.5. 3 rebounds is 49.25. 2 3-pointers is 52.25. Minus 8 turnovers, 46 and a quarter. I'm guessing you would not have wanted Trae Young at 46 and a quarter. You could argue it on FanDuel, or which would have been a point or two less because of all the turnovers and the absence of the 3-point bonus and all that. No double-double, no nothing. And that was probably the best guy on the team. Damian Jones got 26 minutes. My guy, he was terrible. I'm not going to read everyone's stats. Cam Reddish might have got 20 here. DeAndre Hunter had 18 or so. Jabari Parker took 16 shots, made 5 of them. Had 5 stocks. I guess he might have got there on FanDuel. 11 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist, 5 stocks. So maybe on DK, where that would have been kind of the turnovers, like 32 fantasy points for 6K tonight, maybe you'd have taken him. But I guess my long story around would be, with all the teams tonight, the Hawks probably a little better than the Knicks for me, but going to chalky guy on the Hawks. Like, I think it's just about as likely as DeAndre Hunter gets the line, or Cam Reddish gets the line, or Alex Len gets the line, or Bembry Renaissance, or Alan Crabb, who isn't going to do anything with his 20 whatever minutes in a horrible matchup, but is going to play 20 whatever minutes, or that, again, like this game, you probably actually wanted nobody. So I would think if you asked me to say how many Hawks are on the winning lineup tonight, I'm sure the most likely number is 1. I don't know if I would rank it at slightly above 1, meaning that I think 2 is more likely than 0, or slightly below 1 in thinking that 0 is more likely than 2. But, and I'm a Trae Young believer, but it's pace and matchup. And, and again, this is a game they lost by 20 plus. He played 39 minutes, really didn't get there. So I think if Horford had been out, I would be even more critical of the situation because there's just more value there. I would rather take shots at with the expanding minutes there against the Nets. But so I long story short of saying, I struggle to get there with a lot of the Hawks, and the Knicks at least, some of whom again are well underpriced. Another guy, Marcus Morris on FanDuel, is dollar per dollar, like $1,100 less than DK or something. That's discounted enough that in a really difficult matchup, he probably continues to get the time. But there's just a lot of uncertainty tonight too, where it's always tough to predict this Atlanta team. We don't know really with any definitive certitude what's going on with the Knicks right now. There's a lot of what's going to happen. I mean, let's talk about the Kings for a second. I realize I'm just rambling, but I don't want to not say anything because there's been twice in the last week that I had something really useful to say, didn't say it, and then I was like, oh crap, I knew that was going to happen. I really like Richaun Holmes, another price guy, by the way, in the inverse where he's really expensive on FanDuel or fairly priced on FanDuel, where he's like $7K. Richaun Holmes is $4,800 on DK. Now, this obviously leads to a Marvin Bagley conversation. Marvin Bagley has only played center so far. He's been back for 2 games. He has backed up Richaun Holmes. Richaun Holmes' minutes have come down from the he had some spike like 40-minute games in there, but was pretty realistically getting 32, 33, 35 to, I believe, exactly 27 the last 2 games. I want to double check that because I'm not certain that I have that memorized exactly right. He has gotten 25 and 27 minutes the last 2 games. They're a big fan of his, so much to the extent that a guy they're paying some decent money in Dwayne Dedmon was entirely purged, expurgated, removed from the rotation at the expense of getting him into the starting lineup and playing more time. I don't think it's very likely. I think it's more likely his time increases than decreases. Now, Bagley is not only going to play 21, 23 minutes, and he's also in a very good matchup, just fine to play, especially on DraftKings, $5,700. That's a fine price. You can get bagels. I'm going to call them bagels from now on. You can get bagels in your life absolutely as much as you want to. He is going to start playing more minutes shortly. I'm almost certain. I would be very surprised if you didn't get him. I will take the over on 23 tonight. And I would be surprised if those numbers aren't getting towards the high 20s within a few days and getting towards 30 and probably surpassing it within a week or two. This is an island game for the Kings. Yeah, the back-to-backs are just Brooklyn. Trying to remember. Anyway, I'm not sure, but I know the Kings don't play again tomorrow, and they didn't play yesterday. So I'll check the schedule in a second. Sorry, I'm kind of sick. I'm not memorizing everything as much as I usually do, I think. But anyhow, his minutes are going to come up. I don't think the likelihood is that they come away from Richaun Holmes. I don't think they yank Richaun Holmes, who's been really, really good for this team. Several people whose NBA opinions I respect say he's been the best player on that team this year. That's significant. Long story short, being for the purpose of today's slate, I feel like 25 to 27 is a conservative estimate. I do think when you start getting more minutes out of Bagley, they come hopefully off Trevor Ariza. He should get Trevor Ariza's minutes right now. I don't know what the hell's going on with that. I don't think we need to develop Trevor Ariza anymore. I think we know the plan there. So they should come from there. Or Nemanja Bjelica, or Harrison Barnes, or any number of guys who occasionally touch the court on the 4 for this team. So long story short, you can safely, I think, project Richaun Holmes for 27 minutes tonight against the Warriors at $4,800. There's at least a very real upside there. I think we can all agree. And there's a chance that they don't do dumbass things with the rotation tonight, and he plays 32, which again he was doing for quite a while, and Bagley plays 16 minutes of backup center and takes 10 minutes off Ariza, who's playing 25 minutes for absolutely no good reason, and still leaves Bjelica's time, and that's a better team, and everyone's getting their time. So $4,800 Richaun Holmes hasn't had a big game in a little bit. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the guy. We have him at 24%. Okay, good job knowing what's going on, people. But I'm fairly excited about that play. So that was a whole lot of rambling through many teams and games and things, but a lot of things I wanted to touch on.
Staying in that game, you've got Alec Burks rated AA. People have some questions about that.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I don't think Pascal plays. If Pascal played, I would probably reduce him to a BA. Guy is starting playing 30 minutes and taking a pile of shots. He is dubiously both those rankings. Again, I've considered trying to expand this into a A+, AA minus, B+, B minus type thingamadoo, in which case he would be, A minuses and sort of on the cusp of B pluses. But I like Alec Burks' game. I like this matchup specifically for him. So I'm hesitantly a plan. He's still just 6K, but it's not intended to be an overwhelming endorsement. So sort of getting caught by my small linear things there. But that's a very good question. He's 9% owned. We haven't projected at. I would want to have 15 or 20. But that is not a windmill slam AA. That is I don't mind seeing him in your cash setup. I think he's got a fairly safe role. And I do think he's a guy who carries a big upside. And I like this particular matchup for him. So good question. It does feel a little weird. He is worse than my average AA, if that distinction makes any sense. But very good question. I'm happy to clarify anything like that. I love it when people say to me, you have this guy is CB, but this guy is CA, but you just said that. So I can talk about it for a little bit. And there will be times that I just didn't re-update. Like I'm poking around with the rankings all day. So there's times that you're going to point out something to me that'll be like, no, you're right. I would have changed my opinion because I heard this an hour ago, but I ranked that guy 2 hours ago. So I appreciate those questions very much.
Okay, here's a Draymond question. We got a couple more from this game, then we'll talk about the Knicks. So Draymond, is he starting at point guard tonight? Does that really matter? Is my rebuttal. And then what would you project him at? And I think that's a fair question. I'm putting him in at 32 minutes, or pardon me. Well, it's about the same. I'm putting him in at 32 DK points. Is that aggressive? Not aggressive? That's if you're going to want him in your lineups, you may have to go a little higher than that if you're using an optimizer, but cap thing. So I'm capping him at 30%, and I'm fine getting 30%. It's a 4-game slate. I usually don't play Draymond, but
I assume I ranked Draymond as a BA, which I think is if I didn't, I'd be surprised. I can't remember what I ranked him offhand, but that's really the only reasonable ranking there. Right. Yep. Yeah, I should not need to discuss with anyone the upside that Draymond carries when he plays any significant amount of minutes. Even in 24 minutes, you will get games in a pretty good matchup. The Kings are about as average a matchup as you're going to get. I don't offhand know. I would gather they're somewhere between 10 and 20 in I mean, they're pretty slow, but I'm gathering their defensive rating is probably a little worse than average. Their pace is probably well less than average. Let's see. They're now the slowest team in the NBA. Again, they're basically tied within fractional points of Hornets, Knicks, Magic, Nuggets. Lakers have ticked it up like a full point. They're almost up to average. Way to go, Lakers. And defensively, I'm guessing they're a little worse than average. Let me look at, I don't know, team defensive rating is a good catch-all. They are a little worse than average. They're 18th. So it's a fairly meh matchup. But Draymond isn't someone who correlates great with matchups anyway. I generally will like him more with D'Angelo Russell there because he wilts under the spotlight of being the A player, sort of. We haven't seen a ton of games with him being like the guy who's supposed to carry the team, but he's not a guy who can really initiate the offense that well. He's a brilliant passer, but not as like the guy bringing up the court is basically what it comes down to. Versus your average power forward, yeah, you can get around him. Trying to bring the ball up generally doesn't go incredibly well. And even when he's been the point guard, he ends up ceding little bits of ball handling duty to Alec Burks, brings the ball up some number of times, and Glenn Robinson has enough of a handle that he'll bring the ball over the timeline. And so Kai Bowman is with the G League. So right. That's relevant. So don't play Kai Bowman first of all. But Jacob Evans is another guy who I ranked, and I kind of like Jacob Evans. Anyone who was here for Summer League knows that I mentioned that man's name many times. Pretty decent fan of him as a player. He costs 3,600 on DK, I think. Eligible for basically every position. Played 25 minutes or whatever last game. And again, that's one of the reasons this team fairly hard to predict. Like they're going to play 4 guys at center at least. Not exactly sure where those minutes are going to go. They're going to play all kinds of guys as the point guard. So I don't have a strong take on how much ball handling. Do I think he will handle the ball? Yes. Do I think he'll handle it a lot? Probably about at least as much as anyone else, which will give him some sort of assist upside. Again, the pace is crap, but I'm very nominal on it. And then you throw on top of it the minutes uncertainty. Like, okay, maybe he plays 33 minutes again. It's not a back-to-back or anything, but I do think there's a real issue with if Eric Pascal is in, which I think my guess is he doesn't play today. He's still just questionable, but if he's in, that kind of screws up everybody a little more. This rotation, when we think of this team as how shorthanded they are, is really deep now. Like they have D'Angelo Russell is back, Draymond, Burks, Pascal if he's back, Glenn Robinson, all the guys at center in the bigs with Willie Cauley-Stein and Amari Spellman and Marquise Chris, and then all the extra wings and guards now with you're now adding Damian Lee is back, who is playing a pile of time, and Jacob Evans is back. So I'm dubious on this team doing a ton of anything. I believe I ranked Burks, Pascal, Russell, and Draymond as the 4 guys with A's and GPPs, where I'm just fine if they end up in your GPP lineup. I probably don't want more than one. But again, there are 2 games that are, a little more likely to go absolutely sideways. But yeah, it's a mess, and I don't have a strong read at it. I did a fair bit of research. I lost some of my research time because I was really sick today. But, Kevon Looney too, sorry. Just a whole nother center there. I forgot who's going to play 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 minutes. He's the bare-ass minimum. I ranked him. He can play 14 minutes and get 19 at 3K. That could be really good. I'd rather play Kyle O'Quinn at, say, 3,200. But it's a mess. I mean, it is a real mess. And especially if Pascal is back, they don't need much excuse to only play 26 minutes of Draymond. And he's a pretty inconsistent guy. So, I feel like Burks is the most likely to hold on to 30 minutes and take 16 to 18 shots in his 30 minutes. And at 6K, he's probably the guy I want to go to on this team the most. And obviously, D'Angelo Russell has a massive upside. Like, I am not shocked to see another game this week where he plays 30 minutes and takes 26 shots and makes 18 of them and scores 58 fantasy points. But there's a lot of uncertainty now. And again, they're playing against one of the slowest teams in the NBA. So, I think that all needs to be tempered. But I don't have a great feel for what the hell this team is doing right now. And I don't want to pretend like I do. I need to see more. And every time I say that, I see more, and it doesn't agree with what I saw before that. So I just end up back in the blender.
McGee or Dwight Howard?
I'll take JaVale McGee.
He is starting. Monte Morris or Rajon Rondo?
With LeBron, and I will take Monte Morris there. I would have been a pretty big Rajon Rondo stan in the event LeBron had been out. I imagine a lot of people would have been. And I guess I haven't specifically said this. Our most recent ownership rankings surprised me in that the name on the top was LeBron James. Now, we have him at only 38%, so that's not an overwhelming majority. But something I planned on saying on the show was I think his ownership is unnaturally diluted by the fact that he was questionable for most of the day on an NFL Sunday. So, trying to quantify it as an exercise in utility, but some number of lineups less will be appropriately edited as the day goes on. And a lot of people built lineups in the morning and early afternoon and kind of threw in Anthony Davis as an Anthony Davis without LeBron as a monster. And I guess it's worth pointing out that Anthony Davis had his worst game of the year in that Atlanta game where they blew them out. I believe Anthony Davis, that was the game he had a rebound in. I think he had 11, 1, and 5 was his final line in 27 or 28 minutes. Like, he had his worst game of the year here. I think that is apropos of absolutely nothing. I don't think Jabari Parker shut him down. Although I guess to look at the stat line, Jabari Parker had 5 stocks and he had 1 rebound and a horrific game. So, I think that is apropos of absolutely nothing. But I guess if I'm going to occasionally mention game log evidence in the supporting column of a theory I'm espousing, I should point out that this goes exactly in the opposite direction. But I am interested to see our projection of LeBron James as the highest owned player on the slate. Now, the reason it's not surprising is there's a decent amount of value, and there's just not that many studs to pay up for. You got LeBron and Anthony Davis and Trae Young and Jokic and Embiid's out, so one of those dudes has to get played. So I guess that's still not that crazy, but I do prefer, from a raw projection standpoint, LeBron James to Anthony Davis, and we have them projected pretty similarly. Anthony Davis is number 2 on our ownership projections.
Are you ready for a couple FanDuel questions?
Absolutely. Let's go. I need to satisfy my FanDuel peeps.
Power forward FanDuel under 4,500, please.
Norvel Pelle. Sorry, had to do it. Under 45, because 45 is Marquise Chris, and that's pretty sure gets to be it for me. But let's take a look. See what we have. I'll assume it is a non-Marquise Chris 4,500 or under. Please clarify if that's not the case. It's Jeremy Grant at 4,400. That's not tough. If you already have Chris and Grant, or only had 4,400 and already had Grant, it's pretty clearly Mike Scott at that point. Yeah, this is not a tough one. Not a whole lot of good pivots there I'm feeling great about.
All right. Jared Allen was a AA, but we didn't talk about him. Do you have thoughts?
We should talk about him, especially on the DK price, which is too cheap. Although on FanDuel, where dude's a power forward, it's actually even cheaper on FanDuel proportionally. I think it's 71 and 69.
Nice.
Nice. Let me see what I would rank. I would obviously downgrade him in the event that I thought that Horford may very well have sat here. Horford coming in obviously is a downgrade for him. So I think I have him at AA. Yeah, and that was my guess with Al Horford having been out. With Al Horford now in, I would reduce that to a BA. But he's going to be an A in GPPs almost any day possible. He'll get some against backups time here. And it's worth pointing out again that the matchup specifically for Spencer Dinwiddie is a fairly difficult one. So them going inside a little bit more proportionally makes some more sense. Also worth pointing out when you talk about other players on this team, I don't think Wilson Chandler gets massive time, but I do think he gets relevant time, and he's got to take that time from somebody. Maybe it just comes from the Zon and Musa column. But it's safe to, at that point, be a little more concerned about your Taurean Princes, your by extension Garrett Temple, your Joe Harris is sort of a real thing there. It'll be really, really interesting to see how much time he gets tonight. Brett Brown said he was going to throw him right to the Sharks. I don't think that means, off suspension 35 minutes. But, he's not coming back from an injury. Dude has literally been training for 7 months. So his cardio is probably just fine. So that's worth considering there. I do like Taurean Prince still quite a bit in this matchup. He'd be certainly my second. Well, I guess depends what site you're looking at. $7,700 Spencer Dinwiddie on FanDuel is still just too cheap. That is a minor pricing error. But on DK, I would probably have Allen then Prince as the guys I would first start going to there, I think. But good question. Very good question, FanDuel question. Question.
McGee or Quinn on FanDuel?
Guessing that is Quinn.
Yes, sorry.
I mentioned that because Quinn Cook is playing basketball tonight. So when you say Quinn, I think
they wrote Quinn, but they meant Quinn. I should have added.
Well, screw them, buddy. McGee or Kyle O'Quinn would be Kyle O'Quinn for me. If I'm pivoting away from that at value center, of which there are some interesting ones. And again, center is kind of balls tonight. You're spending $10K on Jokic or 7 on Mitch, which obviously there's some uncertainty. 5 on Len, which obviously there's some uncertainty. 5 on Willie Cauley-Stein. 5 on DeAndre Jordan. You can just keep there's definitely some uncertainty for that. But of the cheap centers, I'm going to go O'Quinn. Then I'm probably going to go Mason Plumlee. I'd like the potential for a blowout. He's going to play anyway. I definitely like his backup matchup where he's going to get lots of Portis and crap like that. So I would probably have of the value centers on FanDuel, the KOQ followed by the Plum Dog Millionaire.
Scott or O'Quinn?
Scott and Cash, O'Quinn and GPPs. I feel like I've made a career of bashing Mike Scott, who I really like as a basketball player, but dude's not going to be as good as he's been. Like, you had crazy game against the Cavs, which they won by 46, 47, and played 24 minutes through the first 3 quarters and took 12 shots and made 9 of them, I think, and still had 25 fantasy points. I'm a little more excited to play Kyle O'Quinn. If they were even ownership, I'm gonna make that. I think, Mike Scott has made something like 11 of his last 16 3-pointers. I like both those players just fine, but I'm saving $400. We have Mike Scott at 10%. We have Kyle O'Quinn at 22%. At that point, I'd rather play Mike Scott. That's enough of a difference for me. They project very similarly for me. Kyle O'Quinn is going to have a much more violent upside downside than Mike Scott, who probably is going to play somewhere in the range of 24 minutes, and most times will end up scoring you 17 fantasy points, which is meh. So it's tough for me because I assume we're talking in GPPs. I really like his ability to throw out a big upside a little more. But Generally, I'd have Scott at if he's going to be like 9% versus 22, which may very well be the case.
All right, Willie Cauley-Stein, Harrison Barnes. Who has more vengeance tonight?
Yeah, there's all kinds of revenge up in this. I'm not excited to play either of those guys. The minutes are really uncertain for Willie Cauley-Stein, and there's certainly things could go wrong for Harrison Barnes. But you made me start a lineup with one of those two guys. It would be Harrison Barnes. Yeah. If you're like, you must play one of these two guys, I'd play Harry Barnes.
All right. Sorry, we got 4 minutes left. Chris or Grant? Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, that's gonna be FanDuel. 45 and 44. Grant definitely for cash. That's not a question for me. I have to project Jeremy Grant a little higher. I'm a little more excited to play Marquise Chris in a tournament. So very similar, by the way, to the O'Quinn Mike Scott thing. Jeremy Grant, Mike Scott, perfectly good NBA backups. Going to get some time regardless. Carry some sort of upside, but shots need to go in. Rebounds need to fall in the right place. Marquise Chris and Kyle O'Quinn can just put up a double-double in 12 minutes. So it's a very similar question to the last one, and an equally good question.
Morris and Taj Gibson. This is I don't even know what it is. Morris and Taj Gibson or Glenn Robinson III and Grant. That's got to be Marcus Morris.
It is. It's FanDuel. I'll take the Morris side. Like I'm not a fan of.
Taj Gibson. Never mind. Yeah. Sorry, I had a Timberwolves flashback. My bad.
Yeah. I'm really not a fan of taking the Nets. Taj Gibson costs basically nothing, and it's a 4-game slate. I don't like the play. I can't advocate for it, but I believe that's FanDuel, and $5,400 Marcus Morris on FanDuel is still a little too cheap. Dude is taking a lot of shots. You're occasionally getting the ridiculous 60-point game out of him. That's not gonna happen against Denver. I think the last Denver game he played 25, 26 minutes, even in the massive blowout, and had like 20 fantasy points. It's not, exciting, but if it's FanDuel, that's right. I don't want to play the DK price against Denver.
All right. Don't forget, we're going to have everybody's favorite game in just a moment. We have 90 seconds left. FanDuel, Glenn Robinson or Marcus Morris. Different person.
I would play Marcus Morris in cash. I would play Marcus Morris in GPPs.
Can you do Horford in cash?
Yes. It's not ideal. I don't think he gets in my first lineup, but the most likely scenario is with Adam Embiid. You're looking at time, and if you're like I like him in GPPs, and I think you can go there in cash. Yes.
All right. So before y'all duck on out of here, remember we do have Live Before Lock NFL Style at 9:30. We want to give a shout out to Fantasy Draft, home of the rake-free daily fantasy sports contest. You're going to want to check it out. They actually have a free roll tonight, single game prop style. This one's put on by Hooters, but if you go to Fantasy Draft, you can join in that contest. You get they have two different prize pools. One if you're actually in Hooters using the app, and two, and somehow they're going to geolocate that, I'm sure. And two, if you're not at Hooters, there's a different prize pool, but anybody can play at home. So definitely check that out. Looks like there's about 15 or 20 questions on there. It should be a fun one. We of course have Live Before Lock 7:30 breaking down that game in great detail. I got my lineups uploaded tonight.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I know it's been a struggle for you sometimes.
There's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing.
The people in chat, half of them think it's funny. The other half are trying to remind me to upload them. So.
Those are part of me thinks it's funny, and part of me wants to remind you. So that's
it's fine.
Those are the normal two reactions to. I am less nauseated than I was yesterday. So we can play a game if you want to play a game. I think I can sit still for that.
I am going there now. We've got oh my god, there's early.
There should be two early games, right? We got.
Yeah, we are. There was early, meaning.
Oh, it's Slate. Yeah, there's two early games to do. I'm waiting
for it to populate over here.
My Monday morning, one of the things I'm often doing is reviewing the Sunday early games, which I don't get to.
Goodness gracious!
We have two games, right?
No, I know. I'm just waiting. It's still not kicked over on the database yet.
Okay. Let me know when it pops. I'm cogitating. But it's 2 games, right? I was just looking for confirmation on that.
Yeah. I think
they're gonna be owned too. They're gonna have 4 game slates.
Yes,
slate,
it's LA and Atlanta and Philly and Brooklyn are the 2.
Yeah. And DK prices. It's really different. Like, Ben Simmons.
There we go. All right. We're going to do the Excellent Eights. This is an $8 contest, $150,000 prize pool. Can you guess how much to first?
50.
50. Thank God a third of the prize pool is going to first.
Right, and it really, there's some embedded mathematics here, which I would deal with and try to turn into some sort of formula where you could work on this sort of thing, but it's really relevant when you have a third of the prize pool to first place as opposed to 10%, how you build your lineup. Like, it's incredibly relevant with whether or not you can talk me into playing Norvel Pelle. I'm much more interested in playing Norvel Pelle when taking first place alone gets me 33 goddamn % of the prize pool. When it gets me 10, I'm not that incentivized to go, there is a relationship between those two things. So it'd be really difficult to quantify, and it's really frustrating that, like, you want to ask why, DFS is hard. That's why DFS is hard. You talk about 16% rake. Well, okay, you're talking about a contest that's already going to take in, $172,000 and pay out $150. Then they're going to pay $50 to first place. So if you don't win, you are competing for $100,000 in prizes out of $172,000 taken in. That's 40% rake. A 40% rake. So you have to leave yourself the opportunity of winning sometime. Now, obviously, you're going to win in share, and it's more complicated than that. But when you talk about, why are you going so crazy with your plays? Because if you never pick a guy owned under 10%, you will basically never solo win. And if you never solo win, it's really hard to justify the enterprise itself. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't days where the guys under 10% are not worth your attention. And every rule and guideline that we talk about and suggest needs to be done reflective to the individual slate on any given day. But that's I'm calling that the Norvel Pelle prize structure from now on.
All right. $1,200 to max enter that one, and 7th place is $1,000.
Right. So if you put in 150 lineups in, what is it, an $8, I'll guess?
$8.
Right. So there's, I guess I should have done 1,200 divided by 150 and figured that out myself. But again, I'm a little bit sick here. So it's an $8. So there are, right. So there's 22,000, doing this all in my head here, but there's 21,500 to 22,000 entries. Is that about right?
22,058.
Okay. So, if you put in your 150 and your best one is, top 1/2 of 1%, 1% would be 220. Top 1/2 of 1% would be 110th. And your best entry of $8 will have turned into, I guess, $60. So yeah, it's a rough go. It's my point. It's the hardest part about this job. It was great back in the day when, you could really do this for a month and I could have 1,000 people listen and 700 of them could have been profitable. Mathematically, that's getting very nearly impossible, and $50,000 to first is kind of the reason why.
Who is the most popular play tonight?
I don't know about tonight, but on these 2 games.
Yeah, these 2 games.
I'll go with LeBron James.
You are correct.
We had him at 38, 39 and change. I think it is going to be a little higher than that for a couple guys. I think you actually get both him and Brow, and a couple are going to get close to. But I'll go with LeBron at 46.
51.
51. Yeah. It's and so, again, that's really interesting how quick people come around. But then Anthony Davis, I feel pretty good about. Now I have no idea. But Anthony Davis?
Yep, Anthony Davis. Or are you guessing? You want me to tell you?
Oh, the number. 40.
46.
Wow. Okay, so assuming there's not a ton of both, I'm guessing there's like 10% both. So you have something like 80% of lineups have one or the other, 10% of both, 10% of neither. If that's roughly correct. I guess I'd want to be on the neither, but you gotta spend that money somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, that's the hard
part. Next. So many 76ers are going to be up here. Like, you're going to have significant ownership on Simmons, Harris, Horford, O'Quinn, Scott. Yep. So all 5 of those other guys are going to be up here. I'll say the most popular of them is on DK pricing. On FanDuel, DK. I think Simmons gets in there. On DK, how much was Horford again? I thought he was out a lot of the day, so I did not give him the attention.
He was 68, I think.
Okay.
62. Right. Sorry, 62. So, I thought he was going to be out as well.
I guess Horford 62.
Horford is correct.
He's the next?
Yep.
32?
38.
Okay. I'm trying to think what 76ers are going to show up here. What non-76ers, excuse me, are going to show up here.
Okay.
It's there's not many.
Nope.
Like it's you will hit a too high number for Kevin Huerter at some point soon, and you will hit a very reasonable Trae Young number, and Jabari Parker will probably hold about 10%, but I'll go 20% on. I'm just gonna do non-76ers real quick. Give me 20% on. Well, we had projected 30, so I'll say 25% on Huerter and 20% on Trae Young.
32 on Huerter, 22 on Young.
Yeah. Okay, they're not crazy. That's more Huerter than I would want, but that backup point time is a real thing for him. And then I'll just let you give me the rest of 76ers. I got a massive headache, but there's several. I imagine other than those two guys, you're gonna have a butt ton of 76ers.
Yeah,
very few Nets. Jared Allen will be well under owned here. Jared Allen's gonna be like 10, 12%, and having Horford in isn't great. He's 8, so I'm like, I'd want more than that, but that's about
All right, Harris 36, Richardson 34, Simmons 24, O'Quinn 20, Scott 20, Dinwiddie.
Simmons 24 is. I'll interrupt you to say Simmons 24 is too low. Yeah. No Embiid Simmons in this matchup with the Nets is too low at 24. The fact that he's owned basically the same as Trae Young in these matchups is a mistake. I like me some Trae Young, and in general, yes, he does carry a bit more of a ceiling, but one of these teams is the Nets, and the other one of these teams is the Lakers.
You want to guess Norvel Pelle?
Sorry?
You want to guess Norvel Pelle?
Let's see. Well, I figure I accounted for about 0.75% to 1%, so I'll say 1.4%.
4.6.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if I'd want it. That's again,
James Ennis 1.
I'd like one more than 1 James Ennis.
Damian Jones a half. Jared Dudley, is he? I don't even know who he's on anymore.
He's on the Lakers. How do you not know he's on the Lakers?
That's right.
He's in all the pictures and the
duds. I'm sorry, on the he has been in a lot of the pictures. So didn't he do a "My Squad is Good" picture? Or something?
Yeah, he did all kinds of stuff. So there you go. I just know, in fairness, for gameplay, there's not a lot there. He gets some time with Kuzma out and things like that. But yeah,
Timothy Lua Cabarro.
Ooh, wow.
John Collins.
Playing yourself.
Zach Norvel Jr., not to be confused with Pelle. Norvel Pelle.
My God. Too many Norvels up in here.
Kyrie Irving.
That's strong. So what was O'Quinn and Scott?
Both were 20.
Were they both 20? Okay, because again, we had it ranked with O'Quinn well higher than Scott. And at that point in tournaments, I'd have well preferred O'Quinn. But we had O'Quinn, double Scott. So I was very... Okay, that puts me in a little bit of a quandary. And again, when the ownerships get that low, it's really something to think about here. 40% versus 20% is a much different thing than 10% versus 5%. Again, it's to compare the relevance of those numbers, it's really the inverse of the ownership more so than the ownership, because you're wanting your guy to go off and lap chunks of the field. So if there's a 60% guy or if there's a 40% guy and a 20% guy, I'll stick with the same example, and you play the 20% guy instead of the 40% guy. When your guy does well, you are improving over a much larger segment of the field. When it's 20 and 10 or 4 and 2, like, it really doesn't make a difference at that point, or not nearly as much, I guess I'll say. How much is the Lakers also ran? How much is Danny Green?
So let's see. JaVale was 7.4. Danny Green was 5.2. Len, not a Laker, but 4.9. Dwight 4.5. Avery Bradley 2. Alex Caruso 1.3.
I don't want more than 2% Avery Bradley. I think
Joel Embiid was 1.8.
I mean, let me draw this as a corollary for you. I would have, so we have Kevin Huerter on a 30-minute cap. We have Avery Bradley on a 25-minute cap. Avery Bradley costs $3,100. I think that's the guy I was thinking of, at $3,100 out of some interest in 2% on a 4-game slate. Yeah. Like, I'm not a big Avery Bradley stan, but he's playing the Hawks. The other guy's playing the Lakers. Like, that's matchups matter, I guess, is what I'm saying. I know we're into the whole I don't predict blowouts and the whatever, but I do predict pace and defensive players, which also, by the way, when you're looking at a massive ownership for Kevin Huerter and the day goes on and then LeBron James ends up playing as opposed to not playing, yeah, that's relevant, looking at, the defense of the team versus, Rondo, who would have picked up a lot of that time. But anyway.
All right.
Stuff.
With that, gamers, we're going to get on out of here. But back at 7:30, we've got NFL, and then we do it all starting again tomorrow at 9:30. DFS NBA Strategy Show, 11 o'clock NFL DFS Strategy Show at some point. There will be a hockey show. Then the deep dive will be at 5. The live before lock will be at 6. I want to say it's an 8-gamer tomorrow. The Early Bird podcast will be out around 10:30 p.m. But with that, you can follow Eddie at Fast Eddie Fair. I am at EMACDFS, and it is Awesemo_COM. Good luck, game.